Billionaire Blood, the Sherman Murders, from survivors to titans. The unsolved murders of Barry and Honey Sherman, where fortune, family, and enemies collide. Welcome to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's true crime podcast, hosted by Jay Nichol of Nichol Investigations. I'm Jay Nichol, and today we begin a multi-part series, one of the most high-profile and baffling unsolved murders in Canadian history. The December 2017 killings of billionaire Barry Sherman and his wife Honey Sherman in their North York home. As of February 2025, the case remains open and active, though the investigative effort has scaled back significantly. Toronto Police Homicide Detective Constable Dennis Yim is the lead, and for the past couple of years, essentially the only officer assigned, working on it part-time while handling administrative duties and other homicide files. The force has turned to artificial intelligence tools, including Microsoft Power BI, to scan and analyze thousands of pages of documents for potential new leads. A major court battle over unsealing more police search warrant material continues. Justice David Porter of the Ontario Court of Justice is expected to rule sometime in January or early February on the Toronto Star's latest application to release additional portions of roughly 4,000 investigative pages. Police have unsealed about 60% so far through the Star's persistent challenges, but significant redactions remain. And Yim has told the court he is playing blind on exactly where the case stands, using a sports analogy to describe the lack of clear progress markers. Despite these challenges, the $35 million reward offered by the family remains unclaimed, and tips continue to come in. 1,255 documented so far. If anything in today's episode or future ones jogs a memory for you, please reach out anonymously to Toronto Police, 416-808-2222, or Crime Stoppers, or send a message to me at the Ontario Cold Case Podcast channels. We pass credible information along when appropriate. Today in episode 1, we focus on who Barry and Honey Sherman were, their origins, their extraordinary rise, their philanthropy, their family, and business world that surrounded them, right up to the final days before their deaths. Understand the victims is the foundation of any serious cold case examination. So let's start at the beginning. Barry Sherman's early life and path to Apotex. Barry Sherman, full name Bernard Charles Sherman, was born on February 25, 1942 in Toronto, Ontario, to Herbert and Sarah Sherman, a working-class Jewish family. Herbert owned a small zipper manufacturing business called the Sherman Zipper Company. But tragedy struck early. He died of a heart attack in 1951 when Barry was just 9 years old. This left Sarah to raise Barry and his siblings alone. She later retrained as an occupational therapist to support the family. The loss instilled in Barry a drive for self-reliance and success. He found a mentor in his uncle, Louis Lloyd Winter, who ran Empire Laboratories, a small pharmaceutical firm specializing in generic drugs. Barry started working there as a teenager, learning the ins and outs of the industry. Barry was academically gifted from a young age. He attended Foresthill Collegiate Institute in Toronto, where he excelled in math and science. He went on to the University of Toronto, graduating with a bachelor's degree in engineering physics in the early 1960s. From there, he pursued a PhD at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, completing it in 1967 with a thesis on control systems engineering and astrophysics-related modeling. But Barry wasn't drawn to academia or traditional engineering jobs. His heart was in business, particularly pharmaceuticals. In 1965, Uncle Lou Winter died unexpectedly, leaving Empire Laboratories in limbo. Barry, then 25, partnered with his friend Joel Ulster, whom he'd known since age 16, to buy the company in 1967 for around $450,000, using loans and savings. They turned it around quickly and sold it in 1972 to ICN Pharmaceuticals, later known as Valiant, for a substantial profit. With that capital, Barry founded Apotex Inc. in 1974, starting small in a Toronto warehouse but with big ambitions to challenge the high prices of brand-name drugs by producing generics. Apotex's growth and Barry's aggressive patent battles. Apotex exploded in growth through the 1980s and 1990s. By the 2000s, it held about 40% of Canada's generic drug market, manufacturing over 300 products in facilities across Canada, the US, Europe, and beyond. The company employed more than 11,000 people globally and generated annual revenues estimated at $1 to $2 billion. Barry's strategy was aggressive and defined his reputation. He filed hundreds of lawsuits to challenge brand-name pharmaceutical patents, often winning the right to produce lower-cost generics sooner. Apotex was involved in more than 1,000 court cases in Canada alone, using the legal system to aggressively contest patents and bring affordable alternatives to market faster. Sherman himself once described Apotex as primarily a legal company that sold medications on the side, and colleagues noted he could juggle as many as 100 legal battles at once. Examples of these patent fights include early success with generics like AZT for HIV treatment and Prozac, an antidepressant, where Apotex raced to market by challenging or waiting out patents. High-profile battles against Pfizer, Bristol-Myers Squibb, and others over blockbuster drugs like Lipitor and Plavix. A notorious 2006 backroom deal with Bristol-Myers Squibb to delay Apotex's generic Plavix launch for $40 million. Drew scrutiny, but highlighted Barry's tactical approach. 2017 loss to AstraZeneca over Prilosec, a heartburn drug, patents resulting in a Canadian $300 million judgment that strained liquidity just months before the murders. Supporters views Barry as a Robin Hood, fighting big pharma monopolies to make medicines affordable. Critics, including University of Ottawa professor Amir Adaran and executives from rival companies, accused him of unethical practices, manipulating the system, overpricing generics in Canada compared to other countries, crossing intellectual property lines. Big pharma companies hated Apotex. One 1999 Fortune report even noted a competitor considered extreme tactics, like planting drugs in Barry's car to discredit him. These endless battles created deep enmities in the industry, enemies who saw Barry as a relentless threat. Despite the wealth, Forbes estimated Barry's net worth at around $3.7 billion Canadian at his death, making him Canada's 12th richest person. Barry lived modestly. He drove beat-up cars like an old Ford Mustang with a leaky roof, and flew economy class even on long trips. He was a self-described atheist but poured millions into Jewish causes through the Apotex Foundation and personal donations to organizations like the United Jewish Appeal Hospitals, example Mount Sinai in Toronto, and universities. Barry started writing an unfinished memoir in the 1990s called A Legacy of Thoughts, which revealed his introspective side, touching on philosophy, business ethics, and his views on life. Friends like Murray Rubin, who knew him for 50 years, described him as someone who loved keeping score in business, but was generous quietly. Honey Sherman's background and their life together. Honey Sherman, born Anna Deborah Reich on January 25, 1947, was born in a displaced persons camp in Austria to Polish Jewish parents who had survived the Holocaust. Her family endured unimaginable loss. Most relatives perished in the camps. They immigrated to Canada in the early 1950s with help from Jewish immigrant aid services. They settled in Toronto, where Honey grew up in a modest immigrant household. She attended public schools and later studied sociology at the University of Toronto. Honey met Barry in 1968 through mutual friends in Toronto's Jewish community. Their connection was immediate, and they married on July 2, 1971, in a traditional Jewish ceremony. Honey often said Barry was her rock, but she was the outgoing counterbalance to his introversion. Friends called her the social engine of the pair. While Barry built Apotex, Honey focused on family and community. She became a fixture in Toronto's philanthropic scene, serving on over a dozen boards, including Baycrest Centre for Geriatric Care, where she was a passionate advocate for elder care, the United Jewish Appeal donating $50 million over the years with Barry, Mount Sinai Hospital Foundation, and the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Her efforts helped raise tens of millions for healthcare, education, and Holocaust remembrance initiatives. Honey also had creative pursuits. In 2012, she produced a documentary, aka Doc Pomus, a heartfelt tribute to the songwriter behind hits like Save the Lance Dance for Me, drawing from her love of music and storytelling. Like Barry, she was frugal personality. The couple hosted lavish charity galas but lived without ostentation. Honey was known for her warmth. Her sister, Mary Schecknam, described her as the glue in family and social circles. Family and inner circle. The Shermans have 4 children. Their eldest, Lauren, was born around 1974 and is their only biological child. She has maintained a very low public profile, focusing on private life but involved in estate matters. Jonathan, born in 1983 via surrogate, pursued entrepreneurship and self-storage facilities and marinas. Barry loaned him over $125 million for these ventures, including a $50 to $60 million debt that became contentious just before the murders. Alexandra, born in 1986 via surrogate, now Alexandra Krotzik, is a philanthropist who founded the Honey and Barry Sherman Legacy Foundation in 2020 to continue her parents' charitable work. She's spoken publicly about her fears post-mortem and ongoing family rifts. The youngest, Kayleen, born in 1990 via surrogate, also keeps a low profile, but shared in interviews that her parents' relationship improved in later years. The family resided in a sprawling 12,000 square foot mansion at 50 Old Colony Road in North York, purchased in the 1990s, a home without security cameras or elaborate protections, reflecting their unassuming lifestyle. In November 2016, they bought a prime lot in Forest Hill for a new custom home, and by late 2017, they were actively planning its design. Barry's business circle was vast and sometimes contentious. Key allies included Joel Ulster, his lifelong best friend and Apotex co-founder, who believed the murders were a hired hit. Jack Kay, Apotex's vice chairman, was a trusted confidant, who rejected suicide theories outright. Jeremy Desai became CEO in 2014 amid Apotex's expansion, but resigned in 2018 amid the Teva lawsuit. Alex Glasenberg served as CFO of SureFam Inc., the family's investment arm, and remains a trustee. Frank D'Angelo, a controversial partner in juice and film ventures, had a checkered past, but provided an alibi. Rivals were plentiful. Barry's cousins, the Winter brothers, Carrie, Jeff, Tim, and the late Dana, sued him in 2006 for 20% of Apotex, claiming entitlement from Empire's sale. The $1 billion case dragged until dismissed in 2017, just months before the murders. Big Pharma companies like Pfizer and Teva were frequent adversaries in court. In the lead up to December 2017, Apotex faced pressures. A 2013 sale of its Italian subsidiary for cash flow, ongoing lawsuits, and Barry's plans to invest more in charity. On December 12th, Honey uncharacteristically missed a Baycrest board meeting, emailing she was dealing with some stuff. The next day, December 13th, couple was at Apotex headquarters reviewing blueprints with architects. They drove home separately around 8 o'clock p.m., Barry emailing staff as late as 9 p.m. That night is now estimated as the time of death. If you're from Toronto's Jewish community, following the generic drug industry in the 2000s and 2010, or ever crossed paths with the Shermans at events or through charity work, did anything stand out about their final months? Drop a message to @OntarioColdCase on X or through the podcast channels. We read listener recollections on air when relevant. Next time, in episode 2, we go to the crime scene. The shocking discovery in December 15, 2017, the initial police response, the first autopsies, and why murder-suicide was seriously considered at the start. If today's episode raised questions or brought back a detail from 2017 North York, share your thoughts. We may discuss them in future episodes. Thanks for listening to Ontario Cold Cases. Stay safe out there, and we'll continue the Sherman story next time. Because every case deserves answers, and every victim deserves justice. Subscribe now to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's true crime podcast. Episodes available wherever you get your podcasts.